there's probably one position that sometimes, you feel like you feel good about a position, and then like behind the starters, you really don't know what you have here. Wide receiver is definitely one of those positions where, God forbid, injury occurs to one of your number one receivers in Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. Who is going to step up? Is there another wide receiver on this roster that could step up, not only to engage in obviously starting as a, number one and number two or number three, whatever the case may be, if someone gets hurt, but special teams as well. And I think this is really important because, luckily enough, even last year, we didn't have any injuries to A.J. Brown. We didn't have any injuries to Devontae Smith. So what happens if that actually happens? How much does the game plan change with Brian Johnson in this offense? So I think that's really interesting. I'm kind of going to go through all the receivers that are on this roster right now and, kind of go through some of the news with some of the receivers, what they've been doing this offseason, and, potentially what we have here, or if they need to go out and get another body. So let's go over all of that. I think it's really important, and let's get into it.
Because I've seen enough horror movies to know any weirdo wearing a mask is never friendly.
Yo, what is going on, guys? Hope it's on a fantastic day today. Hope everyone is enjoying the beginning of their work week. And we are less than a month away, about a month pretty much away from Eagles training camp. We are getting there, guys. Just 3.5 more weeks, almost 4 weeks. And we are there, and we are ready to see kind of the competition kind of unfold right here. Now, going to the wide receiver position, we're obviously set at wide receiver when it comes to the starters. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, we know this. Now, question is, we've talked about this a million times, Quez Watkins, Alamati Zaccheaus. I know I'm saying his name wrong. I at this point, guys, I'm going to say it the way I say it, and I can't say it any other way. I think there's a lot going on here. Now, I think legit, there is a competition at wide receiver 3. I think between Zaccheaus and Quez Watkins, there will be somewhat competition. Or there's going to be a part where whoever wins really the job, I feel like they still will use both of these guys. And I feel like even with Zaccheaus, he's more of a pure slot guy. Quez is, a lot of Eagles fans don't really see Quez as mostly a slot. And a lot of them see him more as an outside receiver. And I totally understand that. There's no doubt about it. But Quez, obviously, a down year last year. Compared to what we've had in the past and having Rager and having, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, we hold these receivers to a higher standard now where we got to make sure that they're making plays and make sure they're not off point. Really, when you look at the Super Bowl, what were the two positions on offense that were less productive? It was wide receiver 3 and it was the running back position. So wide receiver 3, yeah. I know we've been through this a million times this offseason with Quez and what he did last year and what he didn't do last year. And obviously it was a little bit of a down year. He was humble about it. He's working his tail off with some of his trainers and he's bulking up a little bit and hoping to have a really good offseason. I don't care what Nick Sirianni says at the end of the day, like to protect him and all that stuff. Like, I don't mind that, but what shows at camp is what's going to show at camp. If Quez Watkins gets beat, he gets beat. That's just the way it's going to go. I don't want it to happen, and trust me, I am rooting for this guy. But when you look at that, you really have to take into account where, what if injuries do occur with this team? Is there another receiver that can really step up? So not only do I think there's a wide receiver 3 competition, I feel like there's going to be a lot more than that going into training camp with these other wide receivers. Now, between undrafted free agents, between, tryout players or anything like that, I don't know really what to make of it. You kind of look at the back end. Look, I think first, if there's one guy besides Quez Watkins and really, Zaccheaus and that situation going on, I feel like Devin Allen really needs another chance, man. I feel like he could do a lot more. I don't know if he'll ever be a starting receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles, but as a value depth piece for the Eagles, because remember, when they signed Devin Allen, and he hasn't played football since really 2016. He hasn't played an NFL snap, in-game NFL snap at all in his career. Last time he played for a college, and really since 2016, he's just been on the practice squad. So they signed him last offseason to a 3-year deal, figuring that they saw a lot more in him. And some of the news that did come out as well on him, he actually was just in the Olympics the other day as the 4th fastest, hurdleist, I guess, 110-meter hurdles in 23. Devin Allen ran his fastest time in the 110-meter hurdles this year. Saturday, he ran in a time of 13.04 seconds, tied for the 4th fastest in the world this year, and finished second behind Daniel Roberts, who had time of 13:01. Now, obviously, Devin Allen has been kind of, balancing his Olympics with playing in the NFL, but even in preseason, as the picture you see right here, that one touchdown he did have in preseason last year, which it was really cool. But I really wanted him to just be more engaged in, I don't know why the Eagles never really gave him a chance to even play a little bit of special teams or something like that. You know what I mean? Give me something at this point to show me he has a little bit more value. I mean, the thing with Britton, we'll go into Britton Covey, because even though Britton Covey will never see being a starting wide receiver for this team, but as a punt returner, very raw last year. And, we're going to see what this depth chart's going to look like for punt return. I know Zacchaeus is on the punt return list now. Quez Watkins is on the punt return list. No Devontae Smith is on there, thank God. You know what I mean? So I feel like with Britton Covey, was very raw last year. We got brought up 3 times to the active roster, and they really didn't give Devin Allen a chance, at least for one game for special teams, something. But, I can't, there were some faults from Britton Covey, and there were some faults from our blocking scheme on punt returns and stuff like that. So with Britton Covey, I just feel like, obviously with now an off season going and into an off season with the Philadelphia Eagles now, it could be some good things coming from him. So, I mean, hopefully we'll see. I mean, I loved his tape last year, from Utah, and I was a big fan of him last off season, but unfortunately he just didn't really pan out too much, and flashed sometimes and worried us sometimes, running in the piles of people, really running through every bit of little space that he could find and running into groups of players, and we had some issues with it where they didn't really give anybody another chance at punt return. Kind of pissed me off a little bit, but hopefully Devin Allen has another chance. It could showcase a little bit more, and that's what I'm kind of praying for. Really going down the list, I mean, I'm not really looking to see an undrafted free agent, try to make some noise. It would be nice, but I don't know if it's going to happen here. Joseph Nagata from Clemson is another one that they gave him, every undrafted free agent class, they give one guy the most money, $200,000, which is a good payday for an undrafted free agent just to show up, to camp and compete. And I think Joseph Nagata obviously is a bigger receiver, would replace A.J. Brown. Not saying that, it's going to happen, but it is the same skill set in some cases, but has had issues showing off some of his speed, getting separation. Contested catches seem to be pretty good, but nothing really promising there. Jaden Hazelwood from Arkansas is another good one. I think has played, another guy that was in Oklahoma, played in Arkansas, played with Jalen Hurts. So they're getting guys that obviously have had chemistry with Jalen Hurts, which is not a bad thing at all. You have a 23, 24-year-old quarterback, that has had this much success. There's still players around the league that have played with him coming out of college. So you always have to look at those guys going forward. So Hazelwood another guy. Obviously, Charleston Rambo that played with Jalen Hurts in Oklahoma. There's a lot of highlight tape between them two with chemistry. So was a big tryout for the Eagles during OTAs and made it, to compete at training camp. So, it's another guy that's on the board there. So there's really, like I said, I can't put too much on undrafted free agents to really make any noise. But hey, I mean, I'm not against it to see what they could do. I know Greg Ward is still on this roster, but unfortunately, Doug valued Greg Ward more more than Nick does. And I feel bad for Greg Ward because I felt like, he was cut off this team many times, came back and showed some promise, and the Eagles never really did much with him until, Doug really got his hands on him. And, he saved us in a lot of situations, especially the 2019 season when the Eagles were losing receivers. The Eagles were, a month out. They had to win out like the rest of their games to win the NFC East, and the Eagles did it. You know what I mean? So, or at least get into the playoffs at least. And, Greg Ward was one of those heroes at the wide receiver position for us. That was the best at that time. And the oldest receiver on this roster as of right now. The Eagles are very young at wide receiver going all the way around now. So I like this group of guys. Don't get me wrong. There's guys that play with Jalen Hurts. The chemistry with Jalen Hurts from college, which is great. So you got two players that have played with him. And wide receiver 3 is going to be an interesting one going forward, like between Zaccheaus and Quez Watkins. Like I said, I don't care what these coaches say because they're not going to be throwing players under the bus in press conferences, but we got to see firsthand what, who's going to win this competition. As much as I think Quez is probably going to win it, you never know. Alamani Zaccheaus has, had his best season last year with the Falcons. A crappy Falcons offense, but had over 500 yards, 2 touchdowns in the slot. And he is a pure slot, and he is a burner on top of it. I'm trying to wonder right now if Zaccheaus is actually better than Quez Watkins at route running, or maybe there's just a little bit, I think when it comes to, I think they weigh the exact same. I think he's just a little bit shorter. But I've seen Zaccheaus play, and I could see them using Zaccheaus on screen passes, on slant passes, out routes, stuff like the quick stuff, something like that. I think he's another guy that can use. Even if Quez does make the roster, I think both of them are going to make it regardless. But I feel like they could still use both of them. You know what I mean? So the wide receiver 3 position is going to be interesting. And, Quez just, it's not like Quez had a bad year last year. It's not like Quez, there's other receivers that have worse years, like, dropping a lot of, we've had worse receivers than Quez Watkins. There's no doubt. But because we hold this wide receiver room now to a higher standard, you're put into a Super Bowl giving one of the biggest catches, the biggest throws for you to go up and get, and it goes right through your hands. It's a problem. When you're running a route and Jalen Hurts is extending a play and you're wide open, and as a wide receiver 3, you always have to be ready because your time will come when the ball comes to you, and there are times where he just didn't pay attention. The Washington game with the fumble, there's, even after that, when they got in the bye week, they came back, Quez started to, come back a little bit. The confidence was there. I give the coaches credit for giving guys confidence. And obviously they tried giving Quez Watkins a lot more confidence, and there was nothing wrong with that at all. But, like I said, mistakes happen. And I feel like if you can get this wide receiver 3 position to just be a little bit more productive, just imagine you can get out of the rest of this receiver core plus this offensive line. The offense runs through Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith, and A.J. Brown. We all know that. This is a pass-first team. I definitely want to see them run the ball a lot this year. There's no doubt about it. Quez Watkins to get more opportunity, and see what Zaccheaus could do, man. We might be really surprised on what Zaccheaus could do and getting his chance here, which I think is pretty cool. So, this is, the wide receiver group is going to be an interesting tale going into training camp. And I look at injuries. Like, what if injuries do occur, man? What if you lose A.J. Brown? Who's going to replace him? I don't know. What if Devontae Smith gets hurt? I'm knocking on wood for all this. Don't get me wrong. But who's that's what worries me. I think depth at receiver is a huge weakness right now. Depth is huge weakness. And I agree. Even last night when me and Brunson were on the live stream, and he kind of mentioned that, and I was like, that makes a lot of sense. It really does. I never really thought of it that way because injuries can happen. It could be a calf. It could be just something really small where they have to take a couple games off, and guys have to fill that role. Even though if one of these guys is not going to fill for Devontae Smith and produce as much as he does in one game, or A.J. Brown, you know, at least for one game, I could trust it, you know, and I could trust it, at least some type of productivity. And that's when Brian Johnson really needs to get the game plan going if he is losing one of those receivers or something is going on. So, like I said, it's going to come down to, you know, just competitiveness and just the competition alone and to see what these guys could do. So that's really all I really worried about. What can you do at receiver? If there's really nothing going on and they don't like the rest of these guys, if Zaccheaus is really the only backup, you know, Zaccheaus, Covey, whoever else is going to be there, you know, I wouldn't mind signing a Julio Jones as a depth piece if that's what they want to do. You know what I mean? At least you bring a vet in, and as long as Julio Jones can stay healthy, I don't see why not. And I don't think he's looking for a big contract, especially now. It's so late right now. He's going to find some team to jump onto sooner or later. He's not the same player that he used to be, but you know, I feel like if he has to fill in for a game or two, I could deal with it. You know, and I could deal with something like that. You're not going to replace A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith with a player just going in for a game. You're not going to, you just got to be creative with the play calling and just make it work. You know what I mean? Someone else will become the star of that game. It could be the run game. It could be really anybody. You know what I mean? You know, it just depends what works, what doesn't work. But when you go into a Super Bowl like that and your two positions are running back and wide receiver 3 being your less productive, there's a lot of questions there going into an off season. And trust me, wide receiver 3, after that Super Bowl loss, it was a big question for me. Quez Watkins is on a contract year this year, so obviously he's going to be working a little bit extra harder now for that money. And like I said, I don't think the Eagles are going to re-sign him because the Eagles need to work on obviously signing Devontae Smith in a couple years, which is, you know, definitely going to be a plus or a fifth-year option, whatever they're going to do with him. So, yeah, wide receiver depth, yeah, it's a little bit of an issue because anything can happen. I can't go into a season thinking everything's perfect and peaches and cream and everything's going to be perfectly great, no injuries, you know, so things do occur. You know, so other than that, that's pretty much it. Let me know what you guys think about the wide receiver room in general. Do you think there's competition between Quez Watkins and Alamani Zaccheaus, or do you think Quez Watkins is taking it all? You know, and what do you think? Do you think the Eagles need to bring in another body, a veteran body, or somebody to, you know, what would you do? Obviously, if, you know, you're dealing with injuries at wide receiver, like who's going to take over? What would you do for that spot? Would you, like I said, sign a veteran or do something else? I don't know. But it's interesting. It's actually very, very interesting because, like I said, these things do happen. It's not going to be perfect every year. Sometimes, you know, guys deal with injuries, and, you know, I'm praying for good health between everybody. Don't get me wrong. I really am praying for it. But I think it's really interesting to go through all this, obviously all the undrafted guys. Like I said, I'm not going to put too much pressure on them. But, yeah, I mean, if they're turning heads or something like that, or something's going on and something's brewing where there's a player that's really rising above the occasion, then great. That's an awesome sign going forward. So other than that, guys, that's pretty much it. If you guys last as long as this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like the video as well. Do appreciate it so much. I will see you guys on the next one. Enjoy your work week. Shake Squad up. Follow us live. Peace out, guys. Peace.